What if everything you thought you knew about your future was a carefully constructed lie? What if the baby growing inside you wasn't conceived in love, but in conspiracy? What if the man in the perfect tuxedo waiting at the altar was safe, but the dangerous stranger crashing through the gates was your only chance at survival? This is the story of Rachel Hart, a woman who walked down the aisle toward safety and ended up running for her life toward the truth. If you're ready for a journey through secrets, survival, and a love born from absolute chaos, stay with me until the very end. Hit that like button right now, and comment with your city so I can see how far Rachel's story travels across the world. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single moment of this. The afternoon sun caught the lace of Rachel Hart's wedding dress just right, turning the delicate French fabric into something that looked almost celestial against the manicured gardens of the Fairmont Copley Plaza. Each hand-stitched rose seemed to shimmer with borrowed light, creating the illusion of a fairy tale brought to life. But fairy tales, Rachel had learned, were often just beautiful lies we tell ourselves to sleep better at night. She stood before the floor-length mirror in the bridal suite, studying her reflection with dark eyes that should have sparkled with the kind of joy brides are supposed to feel. Instead, they held something closer to resignation, that quiet acceptance of a decision already made, a path already chosen, a future already written in someone else's handwriting. 29 years old. Doctor of veterinary medicine. About to marry a man who made her feel safe but never made her feel alive. Her hand drifted unconsciously to her abdomen, fingers spreading protectively over the slight swell that no one else could detect yet. 8 weeks. 8 weeks of carrying a secret that felt like a stone lodged in her chest, growing heavier with every passing day. "You look beautiful," her sister Emily said from the doorway, champagne flute in hand, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Emily had always been able to read Rachel like an open book. And right now, that book was screaming uncertainty in every single chapter. Rachel smoothed her hands over the silk bodice, feeling her heart beat against her palms. "Do I look like a bride who's making the right choice?" "You look like a bride who's questioning everything," Emily said softly, stepping into the room and closing the door behind her. The click of the latch felt final, like sealing them both inside a confession booth. And that's okay. It's normal to be nervous. Is it normal to feel like you're walking toward the edge of a cliff? Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. Is it normal to stand here in this gorgeous dress, surrounded by flowers and champagne and congratulations, and feel like you're about to make the biggest mistake of your life? Emily set down her champagne and crossed to her sister, taking both of Rachel's trembling hands in hers. "Do you love him?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a candle just blown out, visible, tangible, impossible to ignore. Rachel wanted to say yes. She wanted to believe that the stability Derek Hale offered, the predictable future, the comfortable partnership, the sensible merger of compatible lives, was enough. She wanted to believe that love didn't have to be the wild, consuming, reckless kind that made people abandon reason and leap into the unknown. But the truth was a stubborn thing, refusing to be dressed up in prettier words. "I respect him," Rachel said finally, her voice steady despite the chaos in her heart. "I trust him. He's good to me. He's stable, successful, kind in his own measured way. That's more than a lot of people have, Em. That's more than Mom and Dad had." Emily's expression softened with something that looked dangerously close to pity. "That's not what I asked, Rach. I asked if you love him. The kind of love that makes your heart race when he walks in the room. The kind that makes you want to tell him everything, share everything, build something real together." Before Rachel could answer, before she could admit the truth they both already knew, a knock at the door interrupted them. Derek's mother, Margaret Hale, entered with the kind of commanding presence that made even spacious rooms feel smaller. She was all Boston Brahmin elegance, pearl necklace that probably cost more than Rachel's student loans, perfectly coiffed silver hair that hadn't moved in a decade, and a smile that was more about social propriety than genuine warmth. Margaret Hale was a woman who valued appearances above all else. And Rachel, with her prestigious degree, her respectable career, and her appropriate breeding, was the perfect appearance. "Rachel, darling, we're ready to begin," Margaret announced, her gaze sweeping over her future daughter-in-law with the appraising eye of someone inspecting merchandise. "The guests are seated. The quartet is positioned. Everything is proceeding exactly on schedule. You look lovely. Derek is very fortunate." Fortunate. Not lucky. Not blessed. Not head over heels in love. Fortunate. As if Rachel were a good investment, a sound decision, a merger of compatible assets that would yield appropriate returns. Rachel forced a smile that felt like it might crack her face. "Thank you, Margaret. I'll be right down." As Margaret swept back out, no doubt to micromanage some other aspect of her meticulously orchestrated event, Emily squeezed Rachel's hand hard enough to hurt. "It's not too late," she whispered urgently. "You could still walk away. We could go out the back and trance right now. I'll grab the car, we'll drive to the airport, and by tonight you could be drinking margaritas on a beach somewhere, figuring out what you actually want instead of what everyone expects you to want." For one glorious, terrifying moment, Rachel actually considered it. She imagined herself hiking up this ridiculous dress and running, away from Derek's pleasant but unremarkable face, away from Margaret's cold approval, away from a future that felt like a beautifully decorated cage. But then reality crashed back in, heavy and undeniable. "I'm pregnant," Rachel said, the words escaping before she could stop them. Emily's eyes went wide, her champagne flute nearly slipping from her fingers. "What? Oh my God, Rachel, when did you?" "The fertility clinic," Rachel interrupted, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "Derek's idea. He has a genetic condition, nothing serious, but something he didn't want to pass on naturally. So we used a procedure. IVF. I found out 2 weeks ago." "Jesus, Rachel." Emily looked like she'd been slapped. "You're marrying him and you haven't even told him you're pregnant?" "I know. I know how it sounds." Rachel's hands were shaking now, her carefully constructed composure beginning to crack. I needed to get through today first. One thing at a time. The wedding, then the honeymoon, then I'd tell him and we'd celebrate and everything would be fine. Everything would be fine." But even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. Nothing about this felt fine. Emily looked like she wanted to say more, wanted to shake some sense into her sister, wanted to demand answers to questions Rachel couldn't bear to face. But the string quartet outside began playing the processional music, those achingly beautiful notes that signaled the moment had arrived. No more delays. No more doubts. No more chances to run. Rachel took a deep breath that felt like drowning, picked up her bouquet of white roses and eucalyptus, and stepped toward a future that felt more like a carefully constructed facade than a genuine beginning. The garden ceremony was everything Derek's mother had orchestrated, elegant, refined, and precisely choreographed down to the last flower petal. 200 guests sat in neat rows of white chairs adorned with silk ribbons, most of them Derek's colleagues from his financial consulting firm or Margaret's society friends who measured their worth in country club memberships and charity galas. Rachel's side was smaller, more intimate, her veterinary practice partners, a few college friends who'd stayed in touch, families scattered throughout the rows with genuine smiles instead of social masks. Derek stood at the altar in his immaculate tuxedo, hands clasped in front of him with military precision, his expression pleasant but unremarkable. He looked at Rachel the same way he looked at quarterly financial reports, with careful assessment and measured satisfaction. Not a bad thing, Rachel reminded herself. Passion faded. Chemistry cooled. But respect, stability, partnership, those were the foundations that lasted. She walked down the aisle on her father's arm, her smile fixed in place like a mask she'd learned to wear so well it had become a second skin. Her heart beat with something that felt more like dread than anticipation, each step carrying her closer to a decision she still wasn't sure was right. "This is supposed to be the happiest day of your life," she thought as her father squeezed her hand reassuringly. Why does it feel like you're walking toward the edge of a cliff? The officiant, a friend of Margaret's from some prestigious church, began the ceremony with traditional words about love and commitment, partnership and devotion, two souls joining together to become one. Beautiful words. Empty words. Words that felt like they were describing someone else's wedding, someone else's love story, someone else's future. Rachel heard herself responding at the appropriate moments, watched Derek slip the engagement ring off her finger and prepare to replace it with the wedding band, felt the weight of 200 pairs of eyes watching this supposedly sacred moment. And then the engines roared. When chaos crashes the ceremony. At first, Rachel thought it was traffic from the street beyond the garden walls. Boston was always noisy, sirens and car horns and the constant hum of urban life. But this sound was different. Aggressive. Multiple vehicles moving fast and getting closer. Guests began turning in their seats, murmuring confusion. Derek frowned, his careful composure cracking slightly for the first time all day. The garden gates, ornate wrought iron that had been closed for the private ceremony, suddenly exploded inward with a screech of tortured metal and shattering stone. 3 black SUVs crashed through like battering rams, tires churning up the perfect lawn, heading straight for the ceremony space with terrifying purpose. Screams erupted. Guests scattered like birds from gunfire. Derek grabbed Rachel's arm, trying to pull her toward the side exit, but she stood frozen, her mind unable to process what was happening. This isn't real. This can't be real. This is my wedding day. Things like this don't happen at weddings. The lead SUV screeched to a halt 15 feet from the altar, destroying a flowerbed that had probably cost thousands of dollars. The back door opened with deliberate slowness, and a man stepped out. He was tall, easily 6'3", with broad shoulders filling out a perfectly tailored black suit that probably cost more than Rachel's dress. Dark hair, sharp features that looked like they'd been carved from granite, and eyes that scanned the chaos with the kind of cold calculation that sent ice down Rachel's spine. He moved with absolute confidence, like someone who had crashed weddings before and knew exactly how this would end. Behind him, men in tactical gear emerged from the other vehicles, forming a disciplined perimeter around the ceremony space. They didn't point weapons at anyone, but their presence alone was enough to freeze the remaining guests in place. This wasn't random violence. This was planned. Organized. Professional. The man in the black suit walked straight toward Rachel with the focused intensity of a predator who had found exactly what he was hunting. Derek stepped in front of her, his face flushed with anger and fear. "What the hell do you think you're?" "Step aside," the man said, his voice low and controlled but carrying the kind of authority that made it clear this wasn't a request. "This is a private ceremony," Derek stammered, trying to sound authoritative and failing miserably. "You need to leave immediately before I call." "I said, step aside." Derek didn't move. The man's hand shot out, gripping Derek's shoulder and physically moving him with the kind of casual strength that made it look effortless. Derek stumbled back, shock replacing his indignation, and suddenly there was nothing between Rachel and this dangerous stranger. Then the man stood directly in front of her, and Rachel got her first real look at his face. He was younger than she'd initially thought, maybe 35, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow and eyes the color of cold steel. There was something familiar in his features, something that tugged at the edges of her memory like a half-remembered dream, but she couldn't place it. "Dr. Rachel Hart," he said, and his voice was quieter now, almost gentle, though no less intense. "Who are you?" Rachel managed to ask, her voice shaking despite her best efforts to sound brave. "Luca Valente." He said the name like it should mean something to her. Like it should trigger recognition, fear, understanding. When she didn't react, something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe, or frustration. "You really don't know, do you?" he asked, studying her face with unsettling intensity. "No." What is this? What do you want?" Luca's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath his skin. "The baby you're carrying." It's mine. The words hit Rachel like a physical blow. She actually stumbled back a step, her hand instinctively moving to her abdomen in a protective gesture as old as motherhood itself. That's insane," she whispered, her world tilting on its axis. "I don't even know you. I've never." Boston fertility specialists, Luca interrupted, his voice matter-of-fact, reciting information that should have been private, protected, impossible for him to know. 8 weeks ago, you underwent an IVF procedure. Your fiancé's genetic material was supposed to be used. He paused, letting the weight of his next words settle like stones. It wasn't. Rachel's blood went cold. How do you can't possibly. Derek pushed forward again, his face red with anger or embarrassment or fear, probably all three. This is harassment. This is security. Someone call security. But the hotel security wasn't coming. Rachel realized with growing horror that Luca's men had likely secured every entrance, every exit, every potential escape route. This wasn't random chaos. This was planned, precise, executed with military efficiency. The genetic material used in your procedure was stolen from me, Luca continued, his eyes never leaving Rachel's face. You've been carrying my child for 8 weeks, and you've been in danger for at least 3 of them. Danger? Rachel's voice came out as a whisper, her throat tight with fear. What are you talking about? Luca opened his mouth to answer. And that's when the first shot rang out. The bullet hit the fountain behind the altar, sending up a spray of water and stone fragments. Guests who had been frozen in shock now erupted into full panic, screaming and running in every direction like a herd of terrified animals. Luca moved like lightning, grabbing Rachel and pulling her down behind the overturned chairs as more gunfire erupted from the tree line beyond the garden. Rachel couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The world had become chaos, screaming, gunfire, the acrid smell of gunpowder mixing with the sweet scent of crushed flowers. Luca's body covered hers, one arm wrapped around her protectively while his other hand produced a weapon from inside his jacket with practiced ease. Stay down, he ordered, then barked something in rapid Italian to his men. They moved with practiced precision, returning fire toward the trees, creating a protective corridor between the SUVs and where Luca crouched over Rachel. I can't, I need to, Rachel tried to push up, desperate to see if Emily was safe, if her father had gotten out, if anyone she loved was hurt. But Luca held her firm, his grip gentle but unbreakable. Don't move, he commanded. They're targeting you. Who? Rachel gasped. Who's targeting me? Why would anyone? The same people who orchestrated this entire thing, Luca said, his voice somehow calm despite the bullets flying around them. The pregnancy. The stolen genetic material. They've been watching you for weeks, waiting for the right moment to either take you or eliminate you. His eyes met hers, and in that moment Rachel saw something she hadn't expected, genuine concern. I'm getting you out of here. Now. He pulled her to her feet in one smooth motion and started moving toward his SUV, his body positioned between her and the shooters like a human shield. Rachel's dress caught on something, tearing with a sound like ripping silk, but she didn't care. Nothing made sense. Nothing was real. This morning she'd been worried about wedding vows and whether the flower arrangements looked right, and now people were shooting at her, trying to kill her, and this stranger was claiming to be the father of her baby. They reached the SUV. Luca opened the back door and practically threw her inside, following immediately and slamming the door behind them. Bulletproof glass, Rachel realized dimly. The windows were bulletproof. Drive. Luca shouted to the man behind the wheel. The vehicle lurched forward, tires screaming as they tore across the ruined garden and through what remained of the gates, leaving chaos and destruction in their wake. Rachel twisted around to look out the back window and saw Derek standing in the middle of the devastation, his perfect tuxedo covered in dust and flower petals, staring after her with an expression she couldn't read. Then they were on the street, weaving through Boston traffic at terrifying speeds, and the hotel, the wedding, her old life, everything she thought she knew, disappeared behind them. Rachel's hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking, actually, vibrating with adrenaline and shock and a terror so profound it made her teeth chatter despite the warm afternoon air. "You just kidnapped me," she said, her voice hollow. "You crashed my wedding and kidnapped me." "I saved your life," Luca corrected without looking at her, his attention focused on the street behind them as they weaved through traffic. He was still holding his weapon, though he'd lowered it to his lap. "Those shooters would have taken you regardless. At least my way, you're still breathing. This is insane. This is, let me out. Let me out right now." "Can't do that. You can't just, this is illegal. This is Dr. Hart." Luca turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his steel-gray eyes made her fall silent. "I understand this is overwhelming. I understand you're frightened and confused. But in about 30 seconds, you're going to need to make a choice. Trust that I'm telling you the truth and let me protect you, or fight me and make yourself an easier target for the people who want you dead." Rachel felt her breath catch. "Why would anyone want me dead? I'm a veterinarian. I treat sick animals. I'm not involved in anything dangerous. I don't even know anyone dangerous until," she gestured wildly at him. "Until you. You became involved the moment they decided to use you as a weapon against me," Luca said, his expression grim. "Your pregnancy isn't an accident, Rachel. It's a carefully constructed trap designed to force my hand. And if I don't protect you, they'll take you, extract my child, and eliminate you as a loose end." The word extract hit Rachel like ice water. "Extract? You mean?" "I mean exactly what you think I mean," Luca said quietly. "They don't care about you. They care about leverage. About control. About using an innocent woman and an innocent child to destroy me." His voice softened slightly, and for the first time Rachel heard something other than cold authority. She heard genuine anger, and beneath it, something that might have been fear. "I'm not going to let that happen. But I need you to work with me, not against me." The SUV made a sharp turn, throwing Rachel against the door. She gripped the handle, her mind racing through impossible possibilities. This had to be a nightmare. A stress-induced hallucination. She would wake up in the bridal suite, and this would all be some anxiety dream about cold feet and commitment fears. But the leather seat beneath her was too real. The adrenaline coursing through her veins was too intense. The sound of Luca's breathing beside her was too immediate, too present. "Who are you?" she asked again, quieter this time, her voice breaking. "Really? Who are you?" Luca studied her for a long moment, as if deciding how much truth she could handle. "I'm someone a lot of people fear," he said finally. "Someone with enemies who would use any leverage against me. And you," he gestured toward her abdomen. "You're carrying the most powerful leverage that exists." "The Mafia," Rachel said flatly, the word tasting bitter on her tongue. "You're with the Mafia." "I run a significant organization in the Northeast." "Yes." Rachel pressed her hand against her stomach, feeling the slight swell that she'd thought represented a future with Derek, safe, boring, predictable Derek, who would never crash a wedding or speak about enemies and territory and violence as casually as discussing the weather. "And you're telling me," she said slowly, trying to make her voice steady, "that someone stole your genetic material, and used it to impregnate me without my knowledge or consent, as part of some elaborate plan to, what? Control you? To force me to surrender territory. To weaken my position. To make me vulnerable." Luca's jaw clenched, that muscle jumping again. "And it's working." The admission seemed to cost him something, this confession of weakness from a man who clearly never showed weakness to anyone. Rachel looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since he'd thrown her into this vehicle. He was handsome in that dangerous way that warning bells told you to avoid. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, that scar through his eyebrow that suggested violence was no stranger to his life. But his eyes. God, his eyes were the most unsettling thing about him. They were cold, calculating, the eyes of someone who'd seen too much and felt too little. Except when he looked at her abdomen. Then something shifted, something almost human flickering beneath that frozen surface. "I want proof," she said. "I want medical proof that what you're saying is true." "You'll have it," Luca promised. "I have a doctor at the estate who can run whatever tests you need. DNA comparison, medical records from the clinic, everything." "Estate?" Rachel's voice rose. "You're taking me to somewhere safe," Luca interrupted. "Somewhere with security, with resources, with people who can keep you alive while we figure out who orchestrated this and how to stop them. I don't want to go to your estate. I want to go home." "I want to," Rachel stopped, reality crashing over her like a wave. "I can't go home, can I?" Luca shook his head slowly. "They know where you live. They've been watching you for weeks, probably longer. Your apartment, your veterinary clinic, your usual coffee shop, your sister's place, anywhere you'd normally go is compromised." "My sister," Rachel gasped, her heart seizing with sudden terror. "Oh God, Emily. She was at the wedding." "Is she?" "My men got her out," Luca assured her. "Along with your father and several other family members. They're safe. Shaken, but safe. I'm not a monster, Rachel. I don't hurt innocents. Just crash their weddings and kidnap them?" A ghost of something that might have been amusement flickered across Luca's face. "Only when their lives depend on it." The estate was 45 minutes outside Boston, hidden behind walls that looked more suited to a medieval fortress than a modern residence. Security cameras tracked their progress as massive iron gates swung open, revealing a long driveway lined with ancient oak trees. The mansion itself was stunning, all stone and glass and architectural impossibility. It looked like old money and new power had gotten drunk together and designed something that shouldn't exist but somehow did. "Welcome to my home," Luca said as they pulled up to the front entrance. Rachel wanted to say something cutting, something brave, but the words died in her throat. This place was a world away from her modest Boston apartment with its second-hand furniture and plants she kept forgetting to water. Men in dark suits stood at attention near the entrance. More security, Rachel realized. How many people did it take to protect someone like Luca Valente? How many enemies did he have? "Come," Luca said, opening the door and extending his hand to help her out. Rachel ignored the hand and climbed out on her own, her ruined wedding dress dragging on the ground. She looked down at the torn lace, the grass stains, the dirt, and felt something break inside her. This morning, this dress had represented hope, possibility, a future. Now it was just evidence of how completely her life had shattered. "I'll have clothes sent to your room," Luca said, watching her face. "And anything else you need?" "What I need is to wake up from this nightmare," Rachel said. "I wish I could give you that." And the way he said it, quiet, sincere, made her believe he actually meant it. He led her inside, through a foyer that could have fit her entire apartment, down a hallway lined with art that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime, to a suite of rooms that took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked gardens that made the Fairmonts look like an amateur attempt. A massive four-poster bed dominated the bedroom, covered in linens that looked like they'd been spun from clouds. There was a sitting area, a bathroom with a tub the size of a small pool, and doors that led to what appeared to be a private balcony. "Your room," Luca said simply. "My cage, you mean," Rachel corrected. "Your sanctuary." His voice was firm. "I know you don't believe me yet. I know you think I'm the villain in your story. But give me 24 hours. Let the doctor examine you, see the evidence, and then decide if I'm your enemy or your only ally." Rachel sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. I was supposed to be on my honeymoon right now, she said softly. Derek and I were going to Italy. 2 weeks in Tuscany. We had reservations at this little villa that looked like something from a romance novel. Derek Hale, Luca said the name with something close to contempt. The man who didn't notice his fiancée was pregnant. The man who decided to use a fertility clinic without questioning who had access to your most intimate medical procedures. The man who left you standing in a war zone while he saved himself. He's a good man, Rachel defended weakly, though even as she said it, she remembered Derek's face in those final moments, not trying to shield her, not trying to help her, just standing there in shock while Luca carried her to safety. Good is a luxury people like us can't afford, Luca said. In my world, you're either useful or you're dead. Derek Hale is neither. He's just mediocre. The word stung because it was true. Derek was mediocre. Safe, stable, unremarkable, mediocre. And Rachel had been about to spend the rest of her life settling for that. Get some rest, Luca said, moving toward the door. The doctor will be here in an hour to run tests. If you need anything before then, there's a phone on the nightstand. Just press 1 and someone will come. Am I a prisoner here? Rachel asked. Luca paused at the door, his hand on the frame. You're a guest who can't leave for her own safety. Call it whatever helps you sleep at night. I want to talk to my sister, Rachel said. I want to know that Emily's really okay. I'll arrange it, Luca promised. After the doctor confirms what I've told you is true, you can call your sister, reassure her, let her know you're safe. Safe, Rachel repeated bitterly. Is anyone really safe in your world? Luca looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. No, he said finally. But I'm going to make damn sure you are. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him, leaving Rachel alone in this beautiful cage with her thoughts and her fears and a truth she wasn't ready to accept. Dr. Sophia Chen arrived exactly 1 hour later, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and steady hands. She carried a medical bag that looked like it belonged in a hospital, not a mafia boss's estate. Dr. Hart, she greeted Rachel warmly. I'm Dr. Chen. I understand you've had quite a traumatic day. Rachel almost laughed. That's putting it mildly. Let's get you examined, shall we? Make sure both you and the baby are healthy after all that excitement. The word baby made it real in a way nothing else had. Rachel's hand went to her stomach again, that protective gesture becoming automatic. Dr. Chen was gentle, professional, thorough. She took blood samples, performed an ultrasound, asked questions about Rachel's medical history and the IVF procedure. Through it all, she maintained a calm demeanor that Rachel found oddly comforting. Everything looks good, Dr. Chen said finally, showing Rachel the ultrasound image. There's your little one. 8 weeks along, developing normally, strong heartbeat. Rachel stared at the grainy image, at the tiny flutter that represented a life growing inside her. Her baby. Except, maybe not just hers. Can you tell me if what Luca said is true? Rachel asked quietly. About the genetic material being switched? Dr. Chen's expression grew serious. I have the records from Boston fertility specialists. I also have Mr. Valente's genetic profile. I'll need to wait for your blood work to come back to confirm with absolute certainty, but based on what I've reviewed. She paused, choosing her words carefully. The timeline matches. The circumstances are suspicious. And the clinic has already admitted to a security breach around the time of your procedure. Rachel felt the room tilt. A security breach? Someone hacked their systems, accessed patient files, and according to their internal investigation, may have tampered with sample storage. Dr. Chen's voice was gentle but firm. Dr. Hart, I think Mr. Valente is telling you the truth. I think your pregnancy was orchestrated without your knowledge or consent. And I think you're incredibly lucky that he found out and came for you when he did. Lucky, Rachel whispered. I don't feel very lucky. You're alive, Dr. Chen said simply. The people who did this to you don't let loose ends survive. If Mr. Valente hadn't intervened today, you would have been taken. And I can't promise you would have survived the experience. Rachel wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm room. How long have you worked for him? For Luca? 10 years, Dr. Chen said. I've seen him do terrible things to terrible people. But I've also seen him protect the innocent, care for his people, honor his word. He's not a good man by conventional standards. But he's a man of principle. And right now, you and that baby are his principle. After Dr. Chen left with promises to return with test results in a few hours, Rachel found herself drawn to the windows. The estate grounds stretched out before her. Like something from a fantasy, gardens and fountains, security patrols walking in coordinated patterns, walls designed to keep the dangerous world out. Or to keep her in. A knock at the door made her turn. One of Luca's men, younger, with a kind face, stood in the doorway holding a phone. Mr. Valente said you could call your sister, he said, extending the device. Rachel grabbed it like a lifeline, dialing Emily's number with shaking fingers. Rachel. Emily's voice was thick with tears. Oh my God, Rachel, are you okay? What the hell happened? Where are you? Is he hurting you? I'm okay, Rachel said, and was surprised to find it was mostly true. I'm safe. Emily, I need you to listen to me. Everything Luca said, about the baby, about the danger, I think it's true. She could hear Emily's sharp intake of breath. Jesus, Rach. What are you going to do? I don't know, Rachel admitted. But I need you to be safe. Stay with Dad. Don't go to my apartment or the clinic. And Em? Don't trust Derek. Derek? Why would I? Something's not right about him, Rachel said, the realization crystallizing as she spoke. He pushed for the fertility clinic. He chose the specific one. He made all the arrangements. What if he was involved? What if he knew? The silence on the other end was deafening. I'll look into it, Emily said finally. Just, stay safe, okay? And call me tomorrow. If I don't hear from you by tomorrow night, I'm calling the FBI. I will, Rachel promised. I love you, Em. Love you too, Rach. And hey? For what it's worth. This Luca guy. He got you out of that wedding before you could make the biggest mistake of your life. Maybe getting kidnapped is the universe's way of giving you a second chance. After they hung up, Rachel sank back onto the bed, Emily's words echoing in her mind. A second chance. Was that what this was? A violent, chaotic, terrifying second chance at, what? Life? Love? Truth? The DNA results came back 3 hours later, delivered by Dr. Chen herself. It's confirmed, she said gently. Luca Valente is the biological father of your baby. The genetic material used in your IVF procedure was definitely his. Rachel nodded, numb. She'd known, somehow. Known from the moment Luca said it with such absolute certainty. But knowing and having it confirmed were two different things. There's more, Dr. Chen added. We've traced the security breach at the clinic. It was sophisticated, professional, and originated from an IP address linked to a known criminal organization, the Corsetti family. Who are they? Rachel asked. Luca's enemies, Dr. Chen said. Rivals who've been trying to take his territory for years. This pregnancy? It was meant to be a bargaining chip. They were going to use you and the baby to force Luca to surrender. Why me? Rachel's voice broke. Why choose me? I'm nobody. I'm just a veterinarian who treats dogs and cats and occasionally exotic birds. Dr. Chen smiled sadly. You're exactly who they'd choose for that reason. No connection to Luca's world. No protection. No one who'd notice if you disappeared until it was too late. You were vulnerable, Dr. Hart. And they exploited that vulnerability. And Derek? Rachel forced herself to ask. Was he involved? We're still investigating, Dr. Chen admitted. But there are irregularities in his financial records. Large deposits from untraceable sources around the time the clinic was chosen. We think he may have been paid to push you toward that specific facility, though whether he knew the full extent of the plan is unclear. Rachel felt something inside her crack completely. The man she'd been about to marry, the man she'd trusted with her future, had sold her out. Maybe unknowingly, maybe just for money, but he'd sold her out nonetheless. I should feel something, she said numbly. Anger or betrayal or something. But I just feel empty. That's shock, Dr. Chen said kindly. It'll hit you later. For now, focus on staying safe and taking care of yourself and that little one. After the doctor left, Rachel stood and walked to the windows again, watching the sun set over Luca's fortress. Somewhere out there, Derek was probably dealing with the aftermath of the wedding disaster. Somewhere out there, the Corsetti family was planning their next move. And somewhere in this massive estate, Luca Valente was orchestrating defenses to protect her and a child neither of them had planned. The door opened behind her. She didn't need to turn around to know it was him. Dr. Chen told you, Luca said. It wasn't a question. Yes. I'm sorry, he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her turn to look at him. I'm sorry this happened to you. I'm sorry you were dragged into my world without choice or warning. I'm sorry I couldn't prevent it. You saved my life, Rachel said quietly. That's what Dr. Chen said. That if you hadn't come for me today, I'd be dead or worse. I couldn't let that happen. Luca stepped closer, and Rachel saw something in his face she hadn't noticed before: exhaustion, worry, fear. That child you're carrying? It's mine, yes. But more than that, it's innocent. And you're innocent. And in my world, the innocent are the rarest thing of all. What happens now? Rachel asked. Now we keep you safe while I destroy everyone who did this to you, Luca said simply. The Corsettis, anyone at that clinic who was involved, Derek Hale if he was complicit. I will burn their world to ash for what they've done. And me? What about me? Do I just stay here? Live in this gilded cage forever? Luca's expression softened. You stay here until it's safe. Then you choose. You can leave, go anywhere in the world, start over. I'll provide protection, resources, whatever you need. Or. He hesitated, as if the next words were difficult. Or you can stay. Build a life here. Raise our child where I can protect you both. You're asking me to choose between freedom and safety, Rachel said. I'm asking you to stay alive, Luca corrected. Everything else is negotiable. Rachel looked at this man, this dangerous, complicated, impossible man, and felt something shift inside her. Fear was still there, yes. Uncertainty, definitely. But also, curiosity. And something else. Something that felt dangerously close to trust. 24 hours, she said. You asked for 24 hours. You've got them. But Luca? After that, we renegotiate. Because I'm not the kind of woman who stays in a cage, no matter how beautiful it is. For the first time since crashing through those garden gates, Luca Valente smiled. Really smiled. And it transformed his entire face, making him look younger, less dangerous, almost human. I wouldn't expect anything less, Dr. Hart. 3 days had passed since the wedding that wasn't. 3 days of living in beautiful captivity, of DNA tests and security briefings, of learning that the world was far more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. And 3 days of Luca. He wasn't what Rachel expected. He didn't lock her in her room or treat her like property. Instead, he treated her like something precious. Something worth protecting, not because of what she carried, but because of who she was. Every morning, breakfast appeared at her door, not prison food, but her favorites. Somehow he'd learned she loved blueberry pancakes and strong coffee. That she was vegetarian. That she couldn't function before 8 a.m. without caffeine. Every afternoon, Dr. Chen checked on her and the baby, always with gentle reassurance and medical updates that everything was progressing normally. And every evening, Luca came to her room. Not to demand anything. Not to intimidate or control. Just to talk. The first night, he'd knocked softly and asked, "May I come in?" Rachel had almost laughed at the absurdity, a kidnapper asking permission, but something in his tone made her say yes. He'd sat in the chair by the window, keeping distance between them, and said, "Tell me about yourself. The real you, not the version I read in the reports." "You had reports on me?" Rachel asked. "Of course. I needed to understand what they'd done, how they'd targeted you." His expression darkened. "But reports only tell facts. They don't tell me who you are. What makes you laugh? What you dream about? Why you became a veterinarian." So Rachel had told him. About growing up with a father who was a surgeon and a mother who died when she was 12. About choosing animals over people because animals were honest, their pain was visible, their healing measurable, their gratitude genuine. About feeling lost after her mother died and finding purpose in mending broken wings and healing wounded paws. "I fix things," she'd said quietly. "It's what I do. I take broken things and make them whole again." Luca had looked at her with those steel-gray eyes and said, "What happens when the thing that's broken is you?" The question had hung in the air between them, unanswered. Now, on the third night, Rachel found herself actually looking forward to his visit. She'd showered, changed into comfortable clothes that had appeared in her closet, all in her size, all her style, how did he know, and was sitting on the balcony when he knocked. "Come in," she called. Luca entered, and Rachel noticed he looked different tonight. Less armored. He'd removed his suit jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and there was a tiredness around his eyes that suggested he hadn't been sleeping. "Long day?" Rachel asked. "They're all long days when you're trying to hunt down everyone who hurt you," Luca said, but there was no venom in his voice. Just exhaustion. He joined her on the balcony, taking the chair beside hers. For a long moment, they sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear over the estate grounds. "I found out more about Derek," Luca said finally. Rachel's stomach tightened. "Tell me." "He was paid $200,000 to push you toward that specific fertility clinic. The money came from a shell corporation owned by the Corsettis." Luca's voice was carefully neutral. "The evidence suggests he knew he was being paid to manipulate you, but may not have known the full extent of the plan. So he sold me out for money but maybe didn't know they were going to use me to get to you?" Rachel heard the bitterness in her own voice. "That's what it looks like. He's been questioned by people who are very good at getting truthful answers. He claims he thought he was just being paid to recommend a clinic that would give kickbacks. He swears he didn't know about the genetic material swap." "Do you believe him?" Rachel asked. Luca was quiet for a moment. "I believe he's a weak, greedy man who sold out the woman he claimed to love for a payday. Whether he knew the details doesn't change that fundamental truth." Rachel nodded slowly, processing this. "I almost married him. I almost spent my entire life with someone who valued me at $200,000. "You're worth considerably more than that," Luca said quietly. Something in his tone made Rachel look at him. Really look at him. In the soft evening light, he looked less like a mafia boss and more like just a man. A complicated, dangerous, impossible man, but still just a man. Why did you come for me? She asked. Really? You could have just eliminated the Corsettis and dealt with the pregnancy from a distance. Why risk crashing the wedding? Why bring me here? Luca was silent for so long Rachel thought he wouldn't answer. Then. Because the moment I learned about you, about what they'd done, about the child, something changed. His hands gripped the arms of his chair. I've done terrible things, Rachel. I've hurt people, ended lives, built an empire on blood and fear. I'm not a good man. But when I thought about them using you, hurting you, using an innocent child as a weapon. He turned to look at her, and the raw emotion in his eyes made her breath catch. I couldn't let it happen. Not to you. Not to our child. You don't even know me, Rachel whispered. I'm learning, Luca said. Every conversation, every smile, every moment you show strength when most people would crumble, I'm learning who you are. And the more I learn, the more I understand why they chose you. Why? Because you're everything I'm not. Good. Honest. Someone who heals instead of destroys. They thought that would make you weak, make you easy to manipulate. His lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. They were wrong. Rachel felt something warm unfurl in her chest, something dangerous and thrilling and terrifying all at once. This is insane, she said. 3 days ago you crashed my wedding. I should hate you. I should be fighting to escape, not sitting here having actual conversations with you. But you're not, Luca observed. No, Rachel admitted. I'm not. Why is that? Maybe because you recognize that sometimes chaos is the universe's way of saving you from the wrong choice, Luca said, echoing Emily's words. Maybe because you've spent your whole life choosing safe and predictable, and for once you want to choose something real. Real? Rachel laughed, but it wasn't bitter. Is this real? You and me and this impossible situation? The baby is real, Luca said, his gaze dropping to her abdomen. The danger is real. The fact that I would burn the world to keep you both safe, that's real too. Rachel's hand moved to her stomach, feeling the slight swell that was growing more noticeable every day. Dr. Chen says we can find out the gender in a few more weeks. Do you want to know? Luca asked. I think so. Do you? The question hung between them, weighted with implications. This was their child. Not just Rachel's, not just something that had happened to them, but something they were in together. Yes, Luca said. I want to know everything. I want to be part of this, Rachel. Part of every appointment, every milestone, every moment. If you'll let me. This is so messed up, Rachel said, but she was smiling despite herself. We're talking about co-parenting and we barely know each other. Most people date for years before having children together. Most people don't have our story, Luca pointed out. Most people meet at coffee shops or through friends, not through industrial espionage and genetic theft. Rachel laughed, actually laughed, and the sound seemed to surprise them both. When you put it that way, we're basically a romantic comedy. A very violent romantic comedy, Luca added, and now he was smiling too, that rare expression that transformed his face. They sat there, two people who should never have met, connected by circumstance and biology and something else, something that felt dangerously like the beginning of something real. When enemies close in. The attack came on the fourth night. Rachel was asleep when the explosion started, loud, terrifying booms that shook the entire mansion. She bolted upright, her heart racing, the sound of gunfire erupting from multiple directions. Her door burst open. Luca stood there, weapon in hand, his face hard with controlled fury. Get dressed. Now. We're moving you to the safe room. What's happening? Rachel scrambled out of bed, pulling on the clothes he tossed her. The Corsettis. They're here. They've breached the outer perimeter. Luca's voice was calm despite the chaos. I need you to trust me, Rachel. Can you do that? Rachel looked at him, this man who'd crashed into her life like a storm, who'd protected her, who'd shown her more genuine care in 4 days than Derek had in 2 years, and made her choice. Yes. I trust you. Something fierce and protective flashed in Luca's eyes. Then let's go. He led her through the mansion at a run, his body always between her and the windows, his men forming a protective corridor around them. The sounds of battle grew louder, gunfire, shouting, the crash of breaking glass. They reached a hidden door behind a bookshelf, descended stairs that seemed to go down forever, emerged into a reinforced room that looked like it could survive a nuclear blast. You'll be safe here, Luca said, checking weapons, coordinating with his men through an earpiece. The walls are 3 feet thick. Nothing gets through. Where are you going? Rachel grabbed his arm. To end this. The look in his eyes was cold, lethal. They came to my home. They threatened what's mine. I'm going to make sure they never threaten anyone again. Luca. Rachel's voice stopped him at the door. Don't die. Please. Don't die. He turned back, and in 2 strides was in front of her, his hand cupping her face with surprising gentleness. I won't. I have too much to live for now. Then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't soft. It was fierce and desperate and full of everything they hadn't said, everything they'd been dancing around for 4 days. Rachel kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, tasting fear and promise and possibility. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Luca pressed his forehead to hers. When this is over, we talk. Really talk. About us, about the future, about everything. When this is over, Rachel agreed. Then he was gone, and Rachel was alone in the safe room with her racing heart and the sound of war raging above her. The next 2 hours were the longest of her life. She could hear muffled sounds through the thick walls, gunfire, explosions, shouting. She paced, she sat, she pressed her hand to her stomach and whispered promises to the life growing there. Your father is fighting for us. He's going to come back. He has to come back. When the door finally opened, Rachel's heart stopped. Luca stood there, alive but battered. Blood on his shirt, a cut above his eye, exhaustion in every line of his body. But alive. It's over, he said. The Corsettis are finished. Every single one of them. Rachel didn't think. She just ran to him, threw her arms around him, and held on like he was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting. You're okay, she whispered against his chest. You're okay. I told you I had too much to live for, Luca said, his arms wrapping around her just as tightly. I don't break my promises, Rachel. They stood there in the doorway between the safe room and the rest of the mansion, holding each other, 2 people who'd been strangers 5 days ago and were now, what? Rachel didn't know what to call it. But it felt real. It felt right. 6 months later, when chaos becomes choice. Rachel stood in the nursery, one hand on her very pregnant belly, the other holding a paintbrush. The walls were coming along nicely, a soft sage green that Luca had pretended to hate but she knew he secretly loved. You're supposed to be resting, his voice came from the doorway. Rachel turned to see him leaning against the frame, that slight smile on his face that she'd learned meant he was trying not to laugh. I'm painting, not running a marathon, she said. Dr. Chen said. Dr. Chen says a lot of things. Right now, she says our daughter is perfectly healthy and could arrive any day now. Rachel set down the brush and crossed to him. How did the meeting go? Territory is officially ours. The Corsetti's former allies have either sworn loyalty or disappeared. Luca's hand settled on her waist, careful of her belly. It's over, Rachel. Really over. We're safe. We? Rachel raised an eyebrow. Is that your subtle way of asking me to stay? Because I seem to remember having this conversation about 6 times already. And you keep saying, we'll see, Luca pointed out. I'm patient, but even I have limits. Rachel laughed, running her hands up his chest. 6 months had changed so much. The fear had faded, replaced by understanding. The forced proximity had become genuine partnership. And somewhere along the way, between late-night conversations and shared doctor's appointments and Luca's gentle hands on her growing belly, she'd fallen in love. Not the safe, predictable love she'd almost settled for with Derek. But the wild, consuming, reckless kind that made her want to leap into the unknown. Okay, she said. Okay? Luca's eyes sharpened. Okay, I'll stay. I'll build a life here, raise our daughter here, be with you. Really be with you. Rachel smiled at his shocked expression. What? You thought I'd say no? After you've spent 6 months proving that underneath all the danger and violence, you're just a man who reads parenting books at 2 a.m. and panic-bought 17 different baby monitors? I have a reputation to maintain, Luca protested, but he was grinning. If word gets out that I'm soft. Your secret's safe with me, Rachel promised. Besides, I kind of like that you're soft. At least with me. Only with you, Luca said seriously. Only ever with you. He kissed her then, gentle and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, his hand rested on her belly, feeling their daughter kick. She's active today, Rachel observed. She knows her mother just made the best decision of her life, Luca said. Second best, Rachel corrected. The best decision was trusting you when you crashed my wedding and told me an impossible truth. You're never going to let me live that down, are you? Never. Our daughter is going to grow up hearing about how her father crashed her mother's wedding like some kind of action movie hero. Hero? Luca raised an eyebrow. I seem to remember you calling me a kidnapper. You grew on me, Rachel said simply. Like a very dangerous, very protective fungus. Luca laughed, the sound rich and genuine, and pulled her close. I love you, Rachel Hart. I know this started in chaos, but I promise you, every day from now on, I choose you. Choose us. Choose this family we're building. I love you too, Rachel said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. All of it, the chaos, the danger, the impossible beginning. Because it led me here. To you. To us. To something real. Epilogue, 2 years later. The garden was perfect, not the manicured, forced perfection of the Fairmont, but the wild, beautiful kind that happened when you let things grow naturally. Rachel stood under the arch of roses, her daughter Isabella on her hip, watching as Emily adjusted her sister's dress. Second time's the charm? Emily teased. Something like that, Rachel said, smiling. This wedding was nothing like the first one. Number 200 guests, no society friends, no pretense. Just family, real friends, and the people from Luca's organization who'd become like extended family. And Luca, waiting at the altar in a perfectly tailored suit, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. Isabella squirmed, reaching for her father. Dada. I know, sweetheart, Rachel murmured. We're going to him right now. Emily handed Rachel her bouquet, wildflowers, not carefully arranged roses, and kissed her cheek. You look happy, Rach. Really, genuinely happy. I am, Rachel said. I really am. She walked down the aisle, no father giving her away this time, because she was giving herself, making her own choice, with her daughter giggling in her arms. Luca's eyes never left hers. When she reached him, he took Isabella with one arm and Rachel's hand with the other. Ready to make this official? The officiant asked. I've been ready since the day you crashed my first wedding, Rachel said. Then let's make sure no one interrupts this one, Luca said, and kissed her before the officiant could even finish the ceremony. Their guests laughed, Isabella clapped, and Rachel felt her heart overflow with a joy she'd never known existed. Sometimes love doesn't arrive softly. Sometimes it crashes through the gates, disrupts your plans, destroys your illusions, and forces you to see the truth about who you are and what you really want. Sometimes chaos is just the universe's way of saving you from the wrong choice and delivering you to the right one. And sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can do is trust that the storm wasn't meant to destroy you, it was meant to set you free. The best love stories don't start with perfection, they start with truth. Luca and Rachel's relationship was built on honest, if brutal, truth from the beginning. That foundation made everything else possible. A message for you. If you're in a relationship that feels safe but not alive, if you're making choices based on what you should do rather than what your heart is calling you toward, if you're scared to disrupt your life because change is terrifying, let Rachel's story be your wake-up call. Life is too short to settle. Too precious to spend in comfortable cages. Too beautiful to waste on people who don't value you properly. Sometimes you need chaos to wake you up. Sometimes you need disruption to see clearly. Sometimes you need someone to crash through your gates and show you that what you thought you wanted isn't what you actually need. Be brave enough to walk away from what's not working. Be open enough to see possibility in unexpected places. Be strong enough to trust yourself when everything is uncertain. And remember, the person who disrupts your carefully planned life might just be the one who was meant to save it.